This is gonna work. This is gonna be good. All right, let me see if I can go live real quick. I'll be just a second. What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Now I'm going to be doing something a little bit different tonight. A little bit different. I'm going to have a guest join me via phone, and that guest is somebody that Thomas Take listeners and viewers know about. They see him commenting on the videos. They see him putting in his Samuel White take. Samuel White, what's up, guy?
How's it going, Ryan? It's pretty cool to be on here with you.
Yeah, it's about time. So what's new with you? You got some interesting takes, most of which I agree with in terms of the Buffalo Bills 2018 draft. Who's somebody on your short list of guys that you really like that you hope that the Buffalo Bills could eventually take?
Well, most of my information starts to step you in your informative show.
Nice.
But one of the guys that I've taken a liking to, and it kind of fits with my thought process on what I would like to see the Bills do via the draft, would be to look at Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph?
Yeah. Rudolph.
Yeah.
And my thought being, and I think you mentioned this a couple times, and I think we've agreed upon it in some conversations, like, he has a great upside, and we very well may be able to get him with the secondary pick in the first round. But given the way that, the quarterbacks are being rated so highly and sought after so highly, I'm thinking even if we pick them up at 12 and then utilize all the rest of our fantastic picks to make a team, I would be happy with that.
So as far as Mason Rudolph, maybe the 22nd overall pick, that's the second first round pick that they have. Or maybe, if he fell into the second round, that would leave other picks for Buffalo to take other positional players. Who are some of those guys that you would want them to take? Because that would essentially, as of now, they picked 12th overall. They moved down in a trade with the Bengals. They moved down from 21 to, or moved up, I should say, from 21 to 12 in the first round of the draft in a trade that, we talked about it before. I was shocked that they were able to make that happen and thankful, frankly, that they were able to make that happen. Who would you want as the 12th overall pick?
You know what? That's a good question, because I think in all this to do with the quarterback, and I've really looked primarily at the quarterback and their the Bills' first choice. But there was a linebacker and a cornerback that I had looked at previously. Chubb is supposed to be pretty high up on that list, but there was what is it? Raheem Smith.
Raquan Smith, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I checked him out. I liked him. I liked some of the things that I saw. I was actually interested on what your take with him and Evans were.
Evans or Edmonds? Tremaine Edmonds?
No, Rashean.
Oh, Rashawn Evans. Yeah, Rashawn Evans.
And he's from Bama.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think. I always get him confused because there's Rashad Evans in mixed martial arts, and I always call him Rashad. But it's Rashawn.
We're throwing around a lot of names.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. And it's, I put out the video yesterday, which you joined. I was thankful to have you join it, and send live questions and stuff like that. Where, it showed, their draft visits, I think, matter. I think with every team, draft visits matter. And what was really interesting to me was the amount of draft visits that the Bills had that were across the board. They weren't necessarily at one position. They were scattered. And linebacker is obviously a huge need. If they were to get a Raquan Smith or Tremaine Edmonds or even someone in the secondary to add to Trey White, who I really love and enjoy that he's on the Bills for the next, hopefully the next 10 years or so. Hopefully they keep him a long time. Yeah, I mean, you would say though, if you were not looking at a quarterback at 12, you would want Raquan Smith as the 12th overall pick.
Like I said, that hasn't been something that I've researched a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yes, I would probably want him up there. I don't know. Quite honestly, he could get snagged before then, from what I've seen. I don't foresee it given the way things have been panning out, and it looks like there's going to be a few of the QBs taken. Obviously, the fantastic running back. There's so many of these Laquan LaShawn, and I'm getting mixed up. Berkeley out of Penn State.
Yep.
So I mean, there's players like that I would love to get, but I would think we would have to move up to get it. If we're addressing some of our needs, long term, we're going to need some depth, if not some newer starters at the linebacker position. I also think cornerback is pretty big for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see Trey White matched up with someone from his alum. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Just given the chemistry, and he spoke really highly of him from what I've heard thus far.
Yeah. If there's a guy that really jumps out at me that I think there's so many positions in this draft that I see at least 3 or 4 players that could really help the Buffalo Bills at each position. Not even, even offensive linemen, even tight ends. This is a solid draft, and we've seen the last few years in the league that rookie players have come in and they've dominated. They've been the best players at their position in a season. So this is a league that I think is shifting back to the old day where players that were drafted were really good, right away for a team. I don't know if we're going to see a quarterback class like the 1983 class with Ellie and Marino and Kelly, but I do think that this is one of the better ones in recent memory. Who would you say out of the quarterbacks would be a guy that outside of Rudolph to Buffalo, but who, if you were a team in need of a quarterback, who would you rate as the best quarterback in this year's draft based on what you look for in a player?
To be honest with you, I like Rosen.
Mm-hmm. Josh Rosen, yeah.
I like his arm. I think that him and Darnold are up there on my list. But I have to be completely frank with you.
Okay.
I'm not smitten with any of the quarterbacks. I know that some people are, and there's so much interest in the league about these quarterbacks. And maybe I'm just like an old rockhead, but I see them being about as good as most of the other quarterbacks that have come out over the past few years, with some shining moments. And some of them put up some really big numbers. Some, they have some really big arms and just some raw talent.
Yeah.
But my thought process is always about utilizing your picks to get a full team, and then taking your gambles on someone who maybe has fallen to a late first round or a second round, which is why they've mentioned Lamar Jackson. Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of him myself, but he's one of those players where if he could fall into the second round or late first round, I would probably give him a whirl over some of these other quarterbacks. I don't think that the Bills are absolutely broken at the quarterback position right now.
Mm-hmm. What is your assessment of just this past year? We know that obviously Tyrod Taylor's gone. They traded him away to Cleveland for the first overall pick in the third round. So currently, right now, they have Joe Webb actually signed with the Houston Texans this past week, who was a third stringer. So now they have A.J. McCarron. They signed to a 2-year deal, and Nate Peterman. Bills fans around the world knew the decision. The decision was Sean McDermott said, hey, we're going to sit Tyrod for this game against the Chargers. We're going to put in Nate Peterman. We're going to see what he's got because our offense is sputtering. It's spiraling downward. We need to make a switch just to see what this kid's got. It didn't go that well. Obviously, the stat sheet was pretty ugly, but what was your honest assessment from start to finish of his performance? He started the first half of that game, was eventually benched for Tyrod in that same game. What did you think of that game? If you were to go back, I know it was a couple months ago now, but obviously we're avid Bills fans here, so we remember these games. What was your?
I know these games like the back of my hand. I'm pretty sure we had a conversation immediately after that game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think the game ended before we spoke. But I have to say, I think Peterman, first and foremost, was put in a pretty funky position, given the fact that you just mentioned it, the team was falling apart at that point in time. There seemed to be a lack of confidence. All these little pieces that were put together at the beginning of the year that looked fairly decent for us kind of just lost their way. And I personally think, and you can agree or disagree, and your fans could do the same, but I personally think a lot of it had to do with leadership from the top down, from a player position, and it came from Tyrod. I don't think people were bought in like he wasn't leading the team. There were times where he was pumped up and fired up, but whenever things started to fall apart, he wasn't the guy to go in the huddle and get things back on track. And I think we saw the end result of that with that game is that they had a team that was going awry. Now, enter Peterman, okay? He waltzed in there. Okay, and he started firing. I believe it may have been one of his first two. I want to say it was his first pass. Bullet it right in between. I want to say two receivers. It may have just been one. I'm going to add another one and just say three receivers just for emphasis. But he had the courage to do something that had been missing almost all year. Is just make a pass that was difficult and showed confidence in himself and his arm. Now, the rest of the team was still falling apart.
Right.
All aspects, including the offensive line, which is there to protect Peterman, and especially in his first appearance. You need a tip-top line to allow that guy to have some confidence. So he was put in a really bad spot. I thought he did well. I think that once the interception started coming, I think he acted like most rookies would, and he probably lost some confidence. I wouldn't blame him for the majority of those picks, but I would say that he probably played a part in them, given his lack of confidence. And I just don't feel like he got a very fair shake. And I think McDermott realizes that. And I think his wording.
I would agree 100% on that, especially the last part. Yeah.
And I think his wording in some of the conferences afterwards was that, he was doing what was best for the team. But I think he knows in his heart that probably wasn't the best game for Peterman to be in, and that, his evaluation, it shouldn't fall on Peterman's shoulders. It should fall on the shoulders of the team and the coaching personnel as a whole. And I think that's why we'll see a little bit more of him going forward.
That was a really good. I don't even know what word to use. It was kind of like an overview of that whole entire situation. Because my thing was, and most people that tuned into the show in the draft season, this time last year, I could get like a face Facebook look back, and there actually a couple weeks ago I had a Facebook look back. Right around St. Patrick's Day last year was when I really started looking at the quarterbacks in this past year's draft. And Nate Peterman, and I'm not saying it in a boastful way, but at the same time I am, to let people know that I really like Nate Peterman. I see him as somebody that is somewhat raw in terms of learning an NFL offense, but has NFL ability. And that's something that is a little bit hard to find, especially it's very hard to find in the 5th round, which was the round that he was drafted in. Realistically, I saw him as like a 3rd round guy that could make a huge impact, that could make things happen. Maybe not year 1, but year 2. And even in the moments of the game against the Chargers, where he played pretty poorly for a lot of different reasons that were outside of himself, some of which were because of himself, as you stated, that there were moments where he has ability that Tyrod didn't have. So that was why they made that switch and made the move. They saw that on the practice field. They saw that in training camp. I saw that in training camp. I could take my glasses off and see that in training camp. So I definitely agree with you. Where do you see him in terms of year 2? Do you see him battling with AJ McCarron for the starting job, or do you see him?
I would like to see him battle. I honestly think that unless he shows some real progression, that I probably wouldn't force him into any kind of situation where he wasn't just outright, the number 1 for our team. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. Well, I guess I got to back up. You were the person who put me onto him.
Yeah.
I knew next to nothing about him until you said, "Hey, you got to check guy out," and I'm just like, "Oh yeah, this guy is good. Where is he?" And he's like buried in the draft, and it's like, what? So, and I think that
it's a guy that tore up the Clemson Tigers, who went on to win the national championship that year.
Yeah, and everybody passing him up, and I think that during the preseason, and including the times when we saw him in the game.
Yeah,
I think that he was poised better than Tyrod was because he actually had some passion. He was upset at what he did. I hate to regress to talking about Tyrod, but I'm going to spend 32 seconds.
Say what you want. You're on the Thomas Tate.
And you know how I feel about Tyrod. I think that he has some intangibles that are just off the chart.
Mm-hmm.
My problem with him is heart.
Yeah.
And you can't, when he...
You can't teach it. You can't teach that. Yeah.
When he throws a bad pass, you don't see him looking like he feels mad. And he's like, damn it, I'm going to throw that better next time. It's almost like, well, that play didn't work. Put your hands up to your ears and listen for the next play to get called in. I just don't... I'm about heart. Some of the best players that I've ever played football with or any sport with are the little guys who have the heart that get their butt kicked and then they go back and kick butt.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. So that's what I'm thinking. Peterman is going to be someone who's good. And I mentioned this to you during the season that I believe that a lot of the rookie quarterbacks that don't move through that period of getting beat up actually don't fare as well. They get a big head and they pull a Johnny football and
he did not look good. I have to say, he did not look good in that spring league. I hate to say it, but he looked pretty bad. He looked like a guy that hadn't played football in 3 years.
My daughter could have thrown a better touchdown than that, but God bless him for making a touchdown. But yeah, I strongly believe that those people, I don't like Brady for obvious reasons, but he was put in a position where he had to prove himself, and that is the spark for a lot of great people. Le'Veon Bell, that was part of the reason why I was, talking about him last night with you. He was looked at potentially as not being that running back, and people were trying to move him to wide receiver, and he had a chip on his shoulder. He had something to prove, and those are the kind of people who go out and dominate. From my standpoint, anybody can do well when it's sunny and the cameras are on and everything's going well. But I want those people when we're down 30 points, when they're done getting kicked around, and they go in that locker room and punch some stuff, and they come back out and they win the game. That's the kind of people I want on my team. And Tyrod just didn't have that heart for me.
You want to talk about Tom Brady, and this actually just popped into my head, and I've actually never had this thought before, but until now, with what you were saying, sometimes it happens. Like someone's talking, I'm listening, and like I heard everything you said, so I don't want to discredit anything you said because it was all great. Because it does matter when a guy. You see situational football that there's a term. It's like 3rd and 5. What are they going to do? Or 4th and 2 on their own 40. Are they going to go for it? How does a player react when his back is against the wall? That's how it's measured. Yeah. Like the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, the Favres, the Elways, the Montanas, especially the Montanas of the world. All those guys were able to react in the most positive way in the worst of situations. And Brady, the reason why I think there's a lot of reasons why I think he's above everybody else in terms of that, but Drew Bledsoe was the guy in New England. He signed a 6-year, $100 million deal, and Brady saw him as his weak competition. And he was telling players, hey, I'm going to take his job. And everyone's like, who the hell are you? And he took his job. That stands for something. He didn't just take his job. He supplanted every quarterback that had ever played before him, accomplishments-wise. And people say that, they're like, accomplishments-wise. Well, last time I checked, football wasn't about having fun. It was about winning Super Bowls. So, I hate Brady playing against him, but I gotta give him credit where it's due. Even in a losing effort in the Super Bowl, he threw for 500 yards. The last drive, or the drive before the last drive, had they not fumbled, we could be talking about him winning his 6th Super Bowl. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean that's the bar. That's the bar. He set the bar, and he's going to continue to set the bar because he's not retiring, unfortunately. Where do you see the Bills in terms of the state of the division with the AFC East? Where do you see them ranked among, the Dolphins and the Jets and the Patriots? Where do you see those teams right now? And where do you see the Bills in terms of how they can compete with those teams?
I think that this is going to be a weird year. I think that we're going to have a definitive bottom and a definitive top.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets scare me a little bit for obvious reasons. The Patriots, I honestly believe, are going to be back in a strong way. I believe Bills are going to be positioning themselves to start to pick apart the Patriots. I think we're going to see in the draft and some of our later decisions that we're going to swing a lot towards defense because we have our defensive-minded leaders. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that, especially when you're looking to stop Brady.
Right.
I think we're at the point where we realize that the amount of points that you throw up, Brady's going to counteract that.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I would think if it's any other team and any other quarterback, it's a lot of it is a matter of points. If I can put up 40 points a game, I'm probably going to win. I can say that when people play the Patriots, at least as of the last couple of years, going in and having 40 points is not a guarantee. As a matter of fact, you're probably going to lose if you're not able to stop them from hitting that 40 points. It's just like, that's just what it is. It's not a matter of battling them point for point. You literally have to stop them from getting the point. Win by a field goal. Win 3-0. I don't care. Just don't let Brady score, or don't let Brady find his receivers.
Yeah, the way I see it with the Patriots and the Bills going into 2018, the Bills could potentially have. I'm talking as a unit, not player for player. I'm talking unit, like offense, defense, special teams. Bills offense might be a C+. and the Bills' defense might be a B minus, depending on who they add in the draft and things like that.
Yeah.
The Patriots are a B minus or B plus on offense with who they have currently on paper.
Right.
And their defense is about a C minus, maybe even a D with the holes. They have a lot of holes on defense that I think that's why they made that trade with the Rams with Brandon Cooks. They got an extra first. They needed that trade, and I really think that in this draft in particular, that was the right trade to make. They really got Brandon Cooks on a rookie salary for a year and got a first-round pick for him that was an earlier first-round pick than what they traded to get him. So it was like a first-round player rental to get another first-round pick. Only the Patriots could get away with making a move like that. But
that's why I'm not worried about them. And again, I'm not rooting for them, but I don't care for what they're going to do in the draft because Belichick's got to steal mine. He's proved it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Them being at, what did you rank them on offense? B plus?
B plus, yeah, I'd rank him a B plus.
And then defense, C?
I'd rank him a C minus on defense.
C minus.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going pretty low.
Well, I'd rank him.
A lot of people.
Yeah, I'd rank him a C minus just on paper because their defense got worse as the season wore on. And you're talking about, like, you want to see a team. Look at Philly. I mean, Philly got better as the season went on. Given all the adversity that they had with Wentz going down, their front seven in comparison to New England's is like, it's not even close. It's not. And I hate this. I'm not saying it like in a biased way, but on paper and in the Super Bowl this past year, we saw that. And in order for the Bills to really get better and grow as a team, you got to combat their strengths. The Bills have to get better on defense, and they can have a mediocre offense against New England and do okay. They've had a mediocre quarterback the last 3 years, and they've played close with the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's happened. So
that was honestly the only reason that we didn't win a lot of the games was our
quarterback
offensive side. Our defense was doing great.
And that was their defense with, and I love them to death, great dude and everything, but they got some old guys on their defense. Lorenzo Alexander is older. Kyle Williams is older. Jerry Hughes is older. Not old, not past his prime, but not in his prime either. The wrong side of 30 or whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And I'm not saying it in a way like the Bills are terrible, they suck, but I'm saying there's a lot of room for improvement based on this draft. There's a lot of room to grow with who's available in this draft.
Absolutely.
And with what the podcast they did the other day or yesterday, actually, where I was talking about the visits, there's so many players that have visited here that I haven't seen visits like this that are, I believe, the right visits in Buffalo on One Bills Drive ever. And I'm saying ever. I'm 25, going to be 26 and 30th of April, a couple weeks, for the people that need to know my birthday. But they have a lot of room to grow with these visits. I've never seen true great visits in Buffalo. I remember when they had EJ Manuel visit, I thought, man, I'm wondering what round they're going to take him in. And, we could go all day about how they somewhat sabotaged his career based on how they picked him and what they expected and the expectations and the quote unquote bridge quarterback that they put in the room with him, Kevin Cobb. I mean, I could go on and on all day about that, but
not even open up that can of worms.
No, I don't want to pop a vein, but I think that we're on the same page. But if there's anything that you disagree with me on that you think I might be a little bit off on, what do you think as far as that goes? Right page, or do you think there might be something that I have said that you might be like, I don't really agree with that?
You know what? I think that your views have come in the line with mine, or probably both of our views have come in line with each other. Because for a while there was a lot of going back and forth about moving up in the draft in order to snag a QB. And I think the reality of it is them hosting the variety of prospects that they have is an indication that staying put is probably what they're going to want to do. Utilize what they have thus far at quarterback and just build a team. Because if McCarron or Peterman even play moderately well at throwing to whatever targets we have available, Zay Jones, I'm hoping that we're going to be adding some depth wide receiver-wise in the draft, maybe even tight end-wise. But I think that fixing some holes on the offensive line, center, linebacker, cornerback, beefing up some of our depth with our later picks on our defense is going to be huge. Because when we have a full team playing all the time, when one part starts to go down, then you have another part to absorb some of that blow.
Right.
And I don't think that we've had that. And I don't think that we were expecting that completely last year, but we actually did see it. Like when our quarterback started to go down, Tyrod, we did lean on the defense several games. Sometimes they were the sole reason why we ended up with the win that game. And I think that we can still work that, but we have quarterbacks in place currently with some upside. Granted, they're not proven, but they're with upside. And we've mentioned this before that, we saw where Tyrod Taylor's limit was, which is fine. It doesn't make him a bad player. But we have people who have that potential to bypass that.
Yes. Right.
And we can work with that. And then we can fill in the draft to have another person in the making, that could actually have a higher ceiling than them both.
Common sense just says that each year you're trying to get better. You don't want to be worse than you were the year before, unless you're the Buffalo Sabres. We'll talk about that on another podcast. But you don't want to be worse than you were the year before, but worse the next year than you were the year before, I should say. But they knew that they could not get any better with Tyrod Taylor than making the first round of a playoff by the skin of your teeth. I hate to say it, but it was. They needed the Bengals to beat the Ravens. Just being honest. They needed to beat Miami. They needed the Bengals to beat the Ravens. I hate to say it, but they got in by the skin of their teeth. I'm so thankful. I thank the football Lord above that they made it, and this drought is over. But the Jacksonville game was the death sentence of Tyrod's career in Buffalo. That was it. It was over at that point. And when you're on the goal line in the red zone and you can't punch it in and you lose 10-3 in a playoff game, that's it. There's no more after that. So I'm
gonna show my age a little bit, but there's the whole saying about you find out what people are like T-Bad, but you find out what they are when you put them in hot water. And every time I see Tyrod in hot water, you see what he is.
Right.
A marginal decision maker, okay passer and across the middle, and an okay reader of coverages. But when you dial up those big plays, or when it comes time to get fancy with the footwork, he can do it like no other people can.
Right.
So he's fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
But from a play-to-play standpoint, he doesn't have that playmaking ability. And I would prefer someone be mildly vanilla and be able to push the ball 4 or 5 yards every play. And that's what you need.
A smooth operator. That's what you need.
Yeah, and when you get in the red zone, I mean, there should be no excuse to be at, and I don't know what the Bills were at this year, and I actually may look it up after this, but the percentage of how many times they put it in the end zone, in the red zone, was insanely tilted.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine what that number would be.
The word that really, it's just one word: inconsistent. It's you have to have a guy that you can rely on week in and week out to be that dude. And it's not the term is franchise quarterback. Whoever coined that should probably be slapped, because there's so few guys out there that can actually be that guy for 15 to 20 years. Those guys don't grow on trees. And everyone tries to say, well, we need a franchise quarterback. I get that, but it's not that easy to find one. If that's one thing that the Bills have proven the last 20 years, it's very hard to find one. Or they might have looked the wrong way and gone down the wrong street, so to speak, and got the wrong one. They bought the wrong house a time or two. They went all in on guys that might have been, maybe past their prime, or maybe like a Drew Bledsoe, or maybe they reached for a guy like a J.P. Lossman, or they thought that the short intermediate passer would do it, like a Trent Edwards, and none of it worked. So here they are. They got a new regime still. I'd consider this a new regime in McBean. And I'm excited, man. I think that they're headed in the right direction. I say that all the time, and people say, well, they're the Buffalo Bills. They are the Buffalo Bills, and they're the same Buffalo Bills franchise that went to 4 straight Super Bowls again and again and again and again. Despite them being a national punchline, they continued to show up. And that is something that I think is lost on a lot of football fans around the country, that there's only one team that's been to 4 straight Super Bowls in a row. Granted, they lost them, but nobody's going to do that again.
No. And you know what else you have to take into consideration? Like, a lot of the fans want in their heart for us to build a solid all-around team. But I think from a basic nature, they just want to see the Bills do something big and flashy, like move up. And that's what has always gotten us into trouble. We've sold, like you said, we sold the house for one player when we really need a full team of players. I mean, let's say that EJ Manuel did pan out to be a little bit better, and let's just pretend that we did the right thing by getting him. I think that there were still pieces that were missing that he wouldn't have had.
Right.
And what would that, what does that do?
Right.
It does nothing. I'd rather wait to get a later round pick and keep my other pick. And if that guy's a flop, we still have 3, 4, 5 other picks that we might have given up just to get that other guy who very well could still be a flop. I just don't buy that as the sensible way to go. And it's great to see McBean having that common sense to say, let's finish building out a team.
It's the phrase addition by subtraction, and I don't want the Bills to go down that road. And I have people that I talk to, that whether I talked to Nate Geary of WGR, and we talked about it, and he sees my point. I see his point to a degree, but that's what makes this beautiful. Hey, man, this was awesome. I appreciate you popping on. I appreciate all the support per usual. And I'll definitely see you on another show. I know you'll be on again. So everybody,
absolutely, man.
Everybody, that was Samuel White joining the Thomas Take Sports podcast on YouTube. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.